Welcome to the Sunday Scripture Podcast. Each week we identify themes, characters, and main points of the scripture passage we are reading on Sunday morning. We have a new podcast each Wednesday, and I post my sermon audio on Sunday. Welcome to the Sunday Scripture Podcast. We have done this for years as an audio version, and we're trying it out this time as a video version. We see a lot of podcasts go into video, and I think it's fun to be able to interact with one another as if we were sitting at the kitchen table. And in fact, Carl, you are sitting at the kitchen table, are you not?
I am.
And I'm sitting at my dining room table. Brad is traveling for a work event, so he's not able to join us tonight. But we are going to cover something that I've never covered before on the podcast. And I'm going to start off with word association leading into that. Carl, if I said peanut butter, what would you say?
Apples.
Of course. Why would you not say jelly?
Because I prefer apples and peanut butter as opposed to peanut butter and jelly. Jelly's too sweet.
Do you like peanut butter on celery with raisins or no?
No raisins, but peanut butter on good celery. If it's really stringy, I don't want it.
So that's not your typical association, but I have had peanut butter and apples and it's good. Let's try it this way. Actors. If I said Ben Affleck, what other actor do you think of?
Jennifer Lopez.
I didn't think that one either. What an awesome. So you would not think Matt Damon?
No, I'm not going to go with the conventional wisdom. I'm going to go with something different every time.
Okay. So if I hear peanut butter, I think jelly, you think apples. Well, if I hear Ben Affleck, I think Matt Damon, you think Jennifer Lopez.
I think of the logical or the conventional also. But I work extra hard to come up with the second answer, and I go with the second answer.
That'll do. So if I said Ezra, what biblical book would you think of?
Nehemiah.
So we are reading Ezra and Nehemiah this week as part of the commitment to read the Bible in 90 days. You ask me now, and I've served 7 years as a project manager for a utility contractor. My children are in college, one of them almost done, and I see the texts differently. So each time you read it, it's important to notice what you see. The message doesn't change. We change and we notice different parts of the message. So when I post that each day on the Simpsonville United Methodist site on Facebook, there's a link every time, and it's a lot of reading. So if you looked at it and think, I don't have time for that today, there's always a brief description of what that reading is about. And I post it from my personal site as well. You're going to see a description there as well. And you can look back through those brief descriptions to catch up into what we're reading today.
It's your own version of Cliff Notes, only it's Joe's notes.
That's right, Joe's notes. And there have been times when it's entirely tedious. It's chapter after chapter after chapter of genealogy. It's important to note that genealogy, and the person in your family that loves it, they'll tell you about it, and they'll give you hints into why you are who you are, or why we live where we live, things like that. The tedious thing is if you have to read that as the only reading for the day. And we are pulling our way out of that into these stories of the people's struggle. Prophets tell it like it is. Ezra and Nehemiah tell it like it is. And I'll tell you how we got here. Israel long ago divided into two, north and south. They were mad about taxes. They were mad about money. And much larger nations conquered them, dismantled them, and divided them. The Assyrians and the Babylonians swept in about 100 years apart and took all their best and brightest, burned everything to the ground, and dragged people off to foreign nations. In Ezra and Nehemiah, the people are returning to Jerusalem and its destruction. There are many people, let me shift to a modern example, who lived in New Orleans prior to Katrina. Now, it's a big weather event and it was a war event. Those are different. A modern version, contemporary version. But in both cases, the people were swept out of that city. And in New Orleans' case, many of them went to Houston. Many of those people never came back. Some came back just after the storm. Some came back years later. Some never came back. And that is a parallel for what's going on in Ezra and Nehemiah. It's about 50 to 70 years later between the catastrophic event and the return. Carl, 50 years later, 1976. What was going on in your family?
I was in the sixth grade. The country was getting ready to celebrate the 200th anniversary. What do they call it? The bicentennial.
Mm-hmm.
We were living in Dutchess County, New York. If I was in sixth grade, my brother was in fourth grade. That's not right. My brother was in second grade. I can't do math.
Is Dutchess County upstate? Is it above New York? Is it central New York? Is it western New York?
It's 90 miles straight up the Hudson River from Manhattan.
Okay. So like Albany-ish.
No, not that far north.
Okay.
Yeah, it's considered a suburb of the city today because 90 miles is not a great distance. You got to remember, we're in Lake Wylie, and Columbia is 90 miles from Lake Wylie.
In 1976, you could never envision that you were going to live in South Carolina. You were going to have this life. That's how long ago the earliest people who were returning to Jerusalem had returned. That's these people returning after only 50 years. Many of them returned 70 years later. That's 1956. What was going on in your parents' lives in 1956?
I guess they were in high school. Is that right? They would have been in junior high school. So yeah, they were both in Portsmouth, Virginia. Their parents had just gone through World War II. And so that was 10 years out from World War II. And they were in junior high school in Portsmouth, Virginia, which is a Navy town anyway, because they've got a couple of shipyards there.
So that length of time away from Jerusalem, and people are starting to return. They've got different priorities in Ezra and Nehemiah. Some people are thinking about the temple. Some people are thinking about the city. Some people are thinking about the wall. Nehemiah especially is thinking about the wall. So when these people go back, they're arguing with each other. They're arguing with the people that live there now. And on both sides in Ezra and Nehemiah, they are engaging local politicians and influential kings to try to help or impede the other. And they want to rebuild the temple. The bigger problem than arguing with the people who currently occupy that land is that the people who have joined with the people in that land, given their daughters in marriage, and combined their families, Ezra is incredibly bitter that in the interim, and as they've gone back, they are joining with those families and making those bonds. He said, we have got to be separate from them and be our own people. Well, where does that thought come from? It comes from God setting the people apart in Exodus, saying, here's the patterns you're going to have, the worship you're going to have, and here's what you're going to eat, here's what you're not going to eat, so that you are set apart. So many things are put in that cauldron, and that anger and bitterness is what sometimes comes out in the text. So Ezra and Nehemiah connected. There's a little bit about Ezra, but we're reading Nehemiah chapter 1. These are the words of Nehemiah, Hakaliah's son. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the fortress city of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came with some other men from Judah. I asked them about the Jews who had escaped and survived the captivity and about Jerusalem. They told me, those in the province who survived the captivity are in great trouble and shame. The wall around Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. When I heard this news, I sat down and wept. I mourned for days, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. I said, Lord God of heaven, great and awesome God, you are the one who keeps covenant and is truly faithful to those who love you and keep your commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, which I now pray before you night and day for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins of the people of Israel, which we have committed against you. Both I and my family have sinned. We have wronged you greatly. We haven't kept the commandments, the statutes, and the ordinances that you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word that you gave your servant Moses when you said, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments by really doing them, then even though your outcasts live under distant skies, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place that I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people. They are the ones whom you have redeemed by your great power and your strong hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in honoring your name. Please give success to your servant today and grant him favor in the presence of this man. At that time, I was cupbearer to the king. Let me pause in chapter 1, Carl. What'd you see?
It's an incredible burden on one man. I mean, he's trying to atone for a whole nation's sins, right? I mean, uh, I don't know whether it's desperation, but that's what I see.
And he is serving in a distant land. He's worked his way up to be the king cupbearer. He's not his consigliere. He's not a total powerful person, but he's in close proximity. It's somewhat similar to Joseph in Genesis being in proximity to Pharaoh and having influence over him, given that proximity. He's sold, he's in trouble, but then he elevates himself in that court. When he hears in that court, your people and your land are destroyed, he probably doesn't think about home all the time. But when he's reminded of home, he thinks about that devastation and wants to do something about it. He feels that burden that you say and wants to confess to God. I'm curious, it's not an individual bottoming out for him, but that message feels like a bottom out. And what's the upside of bottoming out? Even though it's so mentally, physically, and emotionally painful.
There's only way but up.
Yeah. Like you.
I have a clarification question though. He hears that the temple is destroyed, the wall's been destroyed. Does it take 50 years to get that news? Why is the time frame 50 years for them to come back?
That's true. I'm not sure, unless it's an old wound brought up again. I mean, he's very likely wasn't present in that moment, and I'm out of my depth, right? But he's probably not a 55-year-old man, 70-year-old man going back to rebuild that wall. He's it's being brought to his attention. And whether it was pushed down or whether he wasn't aware of it, something draws that back up again, and he's made aware of that pain.
Let's read some more, but I have a couple of other questions as to the recognized pattern of somebody who is out of the loop being instrumental in getting back into the loop and getting things done.
So he turns to his king, Artaxerxes. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, the king was about to be served wine. I took the wine and gave it to the king. Since I had never seemed sad in his presence, the king asked me, "Why do you seem sad? Since you aren't sick, you must have had a broken heart." I was very afraid and replied, "May the king live forever. Why shouldn't I seem sad when the city, the place of my family's graves, is in ruins and its gates destroyed by fire?" The king asked, "What is it that you need?" I prayed to the God of heaven and replied, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you, please send me to Judah, the city of my family's graves, so that I may rebuild it." With the king sitting beside him, the king asked me, I'm sorry, with the queen sitting beside him, the king asked me, "How long will you be away and when will you return?" So it pleased the king to send me, and I told him how long I would be gone. I also said to him, "If it pleases the king, may letters be given me addressed to the governors of the province beyond the river to allow me to travel to Judah. May the king also issue a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, directing him to supply me with timber for the beams of the temple fortress gates, for the city wall, and for the house in which I will live." The king gave me what I asked, for the gracious power of my God was with me. So I went to the governors of the province beyond the river, gave them the king's letters, and the king had sent officers of the army and cavalry with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard this, they were very angry that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. When I reached Jerusalem and had been there for 3 days, I set out at night, taking only a few people with me. I didn't tell anyone what my God was prompting me to do for Jerusalem, and the only animal I took was one I rode. I went out by night through the valley gate past the dragon spring to the dung gate so that I could inspect the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down, as well as its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the spring gate and to the king's pool. Since there was no room for the animal on which I was riding to pass, I went up by the valley by night and inspected the wall. Then I turned back and returned by entering through the valley gate. What do you see there?
I can't help but think about your project manager job with utility company coming in and getting all the building permits and everything, going into a municipality and a formerly owned municipality utility management group goes, "What the heck are you doing here? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Encroaching in on their fiefdom.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And I can amend it a little bit to something that happens to us frequently. No matter the scale of the project, whether it be 10,000, 100,000, or 2 million, there was a possibility that the utility staff would do the work. But the problem is the utility staff have a job and they got plenty to do. There's not a day when they don't have 6 things that are after them to complete. So you couldn't go and just imagine changing every light bulb in a light store that you pass by, changing every single meter, taking 10 to 12 minutes, customer interactions, driving here and there. Oh, and by the way, you got to do your utility job. It's logical that we would support them in the short term, and that could be 6 months, a year, 2 years. But it's hard because somebody else is coming into my space to do work on the devices that I use frequently. Who is this person? Where do they come from? What are their qualifications? These are reasonable questions that they ask, and that's a fair point that you make. The adder, the accelerant to the problem is that there is a territorial, violent nature to this one that's not present, fortunately, in our business.
I think the story in chapter 2, the story is told in the first person. There's a great narrative there. It's a nuts and bolts, step-by-step story that is kind of fascinating. It's a whole lot better than the genealogy you described in that Read the Bible in a Year quest.
And if you were going to approach two powerful people, which one would make your hand wobble more? The way he approaches God in chapter 1 or approaching his king asking for help in chapter 2?
What's interesting is when he's speaking with the king, he mentions, oh, by the way, I'm praying to my God. So he's actually looking to God for strength. I feel like he's more wobbly with the king because he's looking to God for strength.
The king gives him opportunity. He says, what's going on? What king would ever care about what's going on with the servants? This is a gracious king. I think that's interesting. Something that ties back to our story last week. We read about Ruth, her land in Moab went through a brutal, what's the word I'm trying to say? Scarcity of food.
Famine.
They went through a brutal famine. Her mother-in-law gives up because her husband and her two sons had died in the midst of that famine. And Ruth says, no, we're going to go back to your land and we'll figure it out. When Ruth goes back and works on Boaz's land, there are 3 examples minimum where Boaz instructs his people, don't harm her, don't take advantage of her, don't steal from her, don't yell at her. Nehemiah requests of his king to have something in his pocket that he can document that says, no, this is legitimate. 1, for my security, and 2, so you'll give me more food. Do you think you've seen more in TV and movies where somebody had a passport or they had that document and the people they encounter are like, I don't know what that is and I don't care?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that come to mind when you said the king is very gracious. I think the cupbearer, which, by the way, we could spend an hour on what a cupbearer is, and maybe. I think it says more about Nehemiah than the king, in that the king was touched enough with the relationship of this servant to actually be interested in his plight.
Yeah, that's true. And I've heard a authority figure in our annual conference, the United Methodist Church, say, before you go offering help to someone, wonder out loud if you have their respect. Do they want that in the way that you behave on a regular basis? So you're right. The way that he behaves in the king's presence is a difference without having ever mentioned who he is or what his faith is. If your example, your work, your service, your attitude leads the way with your faith versus the other way, I think is really important. I think that's a great point. Other things that are on our mind, communion liturgy. Last week, the sermon, I emphasized some of the communion liturgy, and I noticed similar terminology again. I confess the sins of the people of Israel, which we've committed against you. Both I and my family have sinned. He acknowledges, and he doesn't say those people have. He doesn't say, well, we did, but we have all this stuff going on. So really, can we just call it even? He says, I want you to draw me back and draw my people back. And I want to participate in the effort of making that happen. Do you think his attitude needs adjustment prior to his calling and purpose? Or do you think it leads his calling and purpose?
I think it leads his calling and purpose, right?
It does. And in these first two chapters, and Ezra's kind of similar, they both end, if you go and read more, they both end in a really frustrating way, in a way that you would watch a movie and you go, why did I watch that? They end in a frustrating way because the people that they interact with have all sorts of positive and negative interactions that impede their desire to do what they're going to do. But what I want to focus on by reading the first two chapters is his desire to get it right, beginning first with contrition. And while he's returning to a land, and Ezra, to reestablish the temple and the wall and the city, the people in Exodus were going to a land to establish that. And in both cases, prior to ever having a building, you have to have the spirit and the willingness to offer that contrition and be willing to learn. If that's the case, the building is a bonus logistically. If it's not the case, you're saying, I'm going to be better when I get the building. And that's a tough way to live. You've got a serious commitment to exercise, getting outside, and fitness. If you said, I was going to do that when all the conditions were perfect, if it's between 68 and 70 degrees with a solid breeze and sunny outside, as soon as that day comes along is the day I'll go. What, how many times would you have ridden?
Maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
Right. Or I'm going to do it when I have time. Right.
So here's an analogy that comes to my mind. You fly a whole lot more than me lately, but when you get into a plane and they go through the safety stuff, the spiel that they do, what is it they tell you about when the mask falls out of the ceiling? What do they tell you to do?
You got to take care of yourself first.
Same thing. And we've talked about for years with me as being with you guys on the podcast. You know, I'm in a 12-step program, and we always talk about taking care of your side of the street. You got to do the next right thing in your recovery. So you're not going to be able to build on toward things that result in sobriety until you take care of your stuff. That includes reaching out to somebody and making amends. It requires an internal look at yourself to figure out what's going on with yourself and how you can improve. I'm giving you paraphrases of the very various steps involved in a program, but it's taking care of your side of the street before you move on and progress. And it's all the same. I think that you've got examples galore in the Bible, and this is what we're hearing from Nehemiah. He's just getting all of his ducks in a row, so to speak. He's asking God, he's getting right with God. He's asking God to forgive his people for not being in contact with him and not making a connection with God. And then he also understands on the earth that he needs help from the king. And once he gets away from that palace or wherever the king is hanging out with the cupbearer, he's going to have to deal with other government officials, and he knows the king can help him with that. So before he goes and tries to say, all right, everybody, let's build the wall back, let's get this temple back up from the ashes, he's getting prepared. He's getting all of the things in line. So he knows what's next. Everything's organized. At least that's the way the story is told.
Yeah, and there's two things, especially in chapter 1, that stick out to me. I will gather them from that place that I've chosen for a dwelling for my name. Why will he gather them? If you return to me and keep my commandments by really doing them. You don't keep the commandments and do them when you're sitting comfy in the place. You Keep the commandments, which draws you closer, and I will draw those people closer to me. It's no secret that our faith community is waiting on an outcome. And the waiting can cause you to go to a dark place. So in response to that, that's why I'm posting each day. I thought, okay, I'm not going to sit waiting. I'm going to do faithful things, one for the church and two for me. Not looking to be a hero here. I'm just looking to say in this description, I'm just looking to describe how I can draw back closer in an amount of time that I have. And by the two things I said I was going to do, I'm going to read the Bible in 90 days and post it. And I'm going to eat better and exercise better. And at the end of those 90 days, if the waiting still goes on, I am infinitely closer to who I want to be and who God wants me to be. And what if it's another 90 days? How much more could I do in those 90 days? The waiting for a dwelling in order to be who you are is completely counter to what is in the journey to the promised land and what is in the journey returning to the promised land. So that really caught me. If you return to me and keep my commandments, I will gather my people. And the second thing that caught me, because it's a double meaning. It's not a double meaning when he says it, but the two chapters make it a double meaning. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in honoring your name. When he says that, he's saying it to God. But in the next chapter, he's saying it as a cupbearer to his king, hoping for help to a person who has no responsibility to help him in any way. I think that's interesting. Very last thing. The officials didn't know where I had gone or what I was doing. I hadn't yet told the Jews, the priests, the officials, the officers, or the rest who were to do the work. So I said to them, you see the trouble that we're in? Jerusalem is in ruins, and gates are destroyed by fire. Come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem so that we won't continue to be in disgrace. I told them that my God had taken care of me, and also told them what the king had said to me. Let's start rebuilding, they said, and they eagerly began the work. But Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it. They mocked and made fun of us. What are you doing? They asked. Are you rebelling against the king? The God of heaven will give us success, I replied. As God's servants, we will start building, but you will have no share, right, or claim in Jerusalem. And that, look, there's some bitterness in this story. There's a lot of bitterness coming. There's bitterness in Ezra. The people do argue. What I look for is the little flashes where we do the right thing and try to follow God's will. So we will rebuild this has a building component. It has a faith community component, and it has an individual effort component, regardless of the location of either of those things. And that's what was interesting to me about it. Any last thoughts, questions, illustrations? What do you eat with a banana?
Sometimes peanut butter, most of the time yogurt, Greek yogurt.
Do love Greek yogurt. That's solid. All right. We'll do a breakfast podcast sometime. We'll talk about our favorite combinations of foods. But tonight it was Nehemiah. Hopefully it's interesting to you. Hopefully the video is a solid component that will continue to contribute who we are. And I'll continue to edit the model that I share the video to make it the best possible for you. Podcasts Wednesdays, best I possibly can. And sermon audio comes out on, actually I said sermon audio, it's sermon video, comes out on Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining with us, being on this journey as we continue to evolve. I hope you have a great week and join us again next time.